And I'm delighted today to be joined from London town by my friend and colleague, Andrea Felsted. Hi, Andrea.
Hello.
Andrea's here to talk about what has been a fairly hot topic for several months now, which is the controversy and the impact of the controversy at Anheuser-Busch, specifically to do with their biggest seller, which is Bud Light. Now, just a little recap. A year ago, last year, Bud Light was the most popular beer in America by a country. It's not. And something's happened in this between last year and now to unpack and understand the full impact of this controversy. But here's what happened with the controversy. Some point in April, Bud Light had a collaboration with Dylan Mulvaney, who is a transgender actor and influencer, in a promotion. It didn't seem like a very big deal when it first came out, but it got bigger and bigger and bigger. If you like, sort of became for a while the focus of culture wars between the left and the right, thanks to media circus, Fox News, and so on. This became a very, very, very big page over a gender person promoting the brand. And we've seen that happen with plenty of other brands, and the culture wars have been raging for a while. Plenty of big name brands have been caught up in it. Chick-fil-A is only one example. But Bud Light, that controversy has just refused to die. It's sort of stayed in that sort of continuous loop of outrage that tends to happen with these controversies. And now, finally, we're getting a real sense of how much that controversy and how much that outrage is costing the brand and how much it is costing Anheuser-Busch, the company that produces Bud Light. And Andrea, sorry for the very long preamble, but for those following this very closely, could you give us a sense of what that cost has been now that we know the numbers?
Yes. Now it's very interesting because, as you said, a very big brand for AB InBev, and the US. It's in the US, which is a big market, and North America last year accounted for about 20% of AB InBev's global sales and about a third of its underlying earnings. So this is a big deal. So it came out last week with its second quarter results, and the second and in the second quarter results, which is the quarter where this all happened, it said that US sales were down about 10.5%. Now, what was interesting is sales to retailers were down about 14%. Sales to wholesalers were down about 15%. It's quite a big impact. And their earnings were actually better than expected because they had a benefit from Brazil and China. They managed to make up for it elsewhere, but if this doesn't sort of right itself, then this is going to be an ongoing problem for them. And there are some signs that the market share losses have stabilized just a bit, but they are still declining. According to Circana, which used to be IRI, now they're Circana. They track the sales, and the sales are still falling. Maybe not as much as they were, but they're still falling. And this hasn't, as Bobby said, this hasn't gone away. Now, this is really interesting, the fact that it hasn't gone away, because my former colleague Sarah Halzak, who used to be my US counterpart, she did an excellent column Really, really excellent column a couple of years ago. You can still read it online on the Bloomberg terminal in 2019, and it was titled "Angry Mobs of Online Shoppers Are Not Real Life." And what she did, she did really well. She tracked some of these incidents. There was an incident in 2018 where the police, Starbucks called the police on a couple of black men who hadn't ordered anything, and this was, rightly, people were very unhappy about this. And also around the same time, Nike did an advertising campaign with Colin Kaepernick, who had become a cultural lightning rod after kneeling during the national anthem. And again, there was outrage over both these things. But what was interesting is it didn't really last very long, and both companies kind of came through it. And also, while people were angry, they didn't necessarily stop purchasing. And I got some similar data from YouGov that tracks these things. And again, they found that the brand health of Bud Light has plummeted, maybe recovered just slightly, but also how likely people are to purchase it has also fallen, quite sharply, and little tiny bit of recovery, but really not much. So this, as Bobby said, this does seem really entrenched.
Yeah, it's really quite shocking how the leg has, and it comes at a particularly bad time because, as you point out in your column, Andrea, beer sales have been on the decline for a while now. And in fact, part of the reason why um, Bud Light reached out to Mulvaney, it was part of an effort by the company to expand its appeal to try and counteract the decline in domestic beer.
Exactly. Now, there's been a switch really from beer and wine to spirits, and this has been gaining ground for many years, but it really got going during the pandemic when everyone was locked down, obviously couldn't go out and drink. They decided to experiment with different drinks and to mix cocktails at home. It was a really big thing. There was, online cocktail hours, and everyone would make their own cocktails. So this really exacerbated the move to spirits. So, it's understandable why Bud would want to reach out to someone young, somebody more diverse, to really broaden their scope of customers and say, look, beer's inclusive, it's for everybody, but this just sort of, this just really, really backfired.
And can happen. It has happened in the past. But what Bud did next, when the controls erupted, that didn't really help either. They ran away. They abandoned Dylan Mulvaney, which earned them the wrath of the left as well as of the right.
Yeah, they really retreated rather than saying, look, these are our values. We stick by our values. These are the values of our brands, and that this is what we do. They just retreated. And Ben Schott did a very good piece on Bloomberg Opinion about this, and this sort of frustrated all sides. And brands, young people in particular, we see this right across the industry, from Unilever, which has got a lot of stick for talking about purpose. But if you think of something like Dove, which for many years it was the brand that first introduced real models, real body positivity, even luxury brands have got to be much more inclusive. Part of the reason why Louis Vuitton has been doing so well in the US is that it brought in the late Virgil Abloh as its designer, and this really showed young Americans of all walks of life, all races, that European luxury, which they thought was very elitist, very sniffy. It's not. It's for everybody. They had Jay-Z and Beyonce in their Tiffany campaign, which has helping to bring Tiffany to a much broader audience. In general, consumers and young people like brands that have a purpose and that stand for something, and this just didn't happen in this case.
Yeah. It's also worth pointing out that this is not the only collaboration that Dylan Mulvaney has done with a major brand. She's done other collaborations with Kate Spade, with Nike, I believe. But this one, the one, and there's been a certain amount of pushback against some of the other campaigns, but there's also been responses to those campaigns. This one somehow just caught fire and then just kept burning. I mean, it really attracted the rock of quite prominent people on the right. I think the rock musician, actually quite a lot of musicians. Travis Tritt, Kid Rock. It's sort of, there's a certain cultural zeitgeist this seems to have captured. What has, since the last shoe to drop was, let's say, the Mulvaney. The second was when the controversy exploded, light, as you say, retreated. What has it done since then to try and recoup or retrieve the situation?
It's done some other sort of advertising campaigns that have tried to sort of connect with its core customers. And I wonder if part of the problem is that, I know they had done some other collaborations, some more diverse collaborations. This wasn't, in fact, the first one. But I wonder if it's because it sort of wasn't directly in tune with the brand and the brand values. And I wonder if perhaps this is a lesson that brands have to learn, that they have to, when they do these things, it really has to be authentic, and it really has to come from a place where the brand really sort of stands for those things, and it has to be much more all-encompassing as well. I mean, I'm thinking of Victoria's Secret, which has managed to quite successfully rebrand. I was actually very skeptical when they first unveiled their new they ditched their very glamorous angels, and they went for a much broader, no less glamorous, but in a different way, a different set of women who represented different values, and tried to connect with a broader audience. But they had something called the Collective, where they had different people that would come in and out, and would appeal to a broader range of customers, much more more different dimensions to what we think of as an angel, which was very defined around how they look. It was much more about activism and what they did. But that actually did feel quite authentic, and it has resonated with customers. So I wonder if that's a lesson to learn. And some of the Unilever brands, although they're often sort of attacked for putting purpose before profit, they have, with Dove and various other things, they have been doing this for a long time. When you think of Ben and Jerry's, has its fair share of controversy, but you can't argue with the fact that for many, many years, Ben and Jerry's has taken a stance on things. And I wonder if that there just wasn't that connect between the core values of the brand and what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, authenticity is the coin of the realm here, right? It's one thing to just throw money at a campaign and say, "Oh, look, we're diverse," but the real test comes when you're challenged, and when the challenge came, Bud was found to be wanting. I want to read out some sections at the time. When the controversy was raging, for the first couple of weeks, the company was just caught like a deer in the headlights, didn't really respond. And when they finally did, there was this really bizarre release from Anheuser-Busch, which is this odd statement that was titled "Our Responsibility to America." And rather than directly address the controversy, I want to read a couple of pieces. He said something like, "We never intended to be a discussion that divides people. We're in the business of over a beer. My time serving this country taught me the importance values upon which America was founded: freedom, hard work, and respect for one another, and so on and so forth." But never really directly addresses, Dylan Mulvaney is not named, and the controversy addressed at all. And max of exactly what you say, authenticity, and authenticity matters more to the of the population all beer manufacturers desperately need, which in order to overcome the sort of gradual decline in sales, which is young people. For young people, authenticity, matters a lot. Very to authenticity.
That's right, and brands really have to, if they are going to put values at the heart of their business, which really they should be, because business nowadays, you really want to sort of you want to sort of sell things, but you don't want to do any harm in selling things, and probably, if you can, try and make the world a better place, given I know it's your business to sell things, but you don't want to do damage. You want to make the world a better place. If you can, they really need to recognize, if they're going to do this, they need to be authentic. They need to put values at the heart of what they do. Otherwise, they will be seen through.
Said beer sales are dropping in the U.S. across most of the big brands. You point out in your column that, which is a big, Anheuser-Busch cut its forecast, its earning forecasts, and have also gone up, which has not helped a great deal. But how are some of the other beer brands trying to deal with this decline in sales? And is there any indication of other strategies that might work where and
I'm not sure about what the other brands are doing in detail, but they are all trying to attract this younger customer in various ways. I mean, the spirits brands have taken a slightly different approach. They've really embraced this cocktail culture. They have mixologists, and during the pandemic they sort of put things online and stuff like that. The beer brands, they all sort of do things like when there's big sporting events, when when there are big events that they get involved with, and that seems to be the way that Bud is also trying to go. But whether it's enough to really offset this damage is, it's not clear.
Do we have? I mean, with billions and billions of dollars involved, I'm sure the companies are trying to get to the bottom of this. I get the pandemic, people weren't going out, and were becoming more experimental with cocktails and so on. But are there other why beer sales have gone down?
And it's really just taste change. Right. Taste change over many years, and lots of younger people don't drink as much. When they drink, they want a better quality drink. They might go for a fancy cocktail. They'll take in sort of less less calorie. They also don't, lots of younger people are very fitness orientated, so they want fewer calories. They want to consume their alcohol with fewer calories, and then they want sort of less drinks but better quality drinks.
Yeah, the quality question is a really one, because of course, as you say, it is a matter of taste. I'm sure Anheuser-Busch will claim that the quality of their beer has, if nothing else, over the years, and but it really is quite a spectacular year. There's a chart that I would encourage our listeners and viewers to go see in Andrea's piece, which shows you just since March of this year, it sort of tracks the four major sort of drink, Anheuser-Busch, Constellation Brands, Boston Beer, and Molson Coors. And you can see where in March they were all pretty close to each other. Anheuser-Busch has gone off the side of a cliff, and Molson Coors has gone up. It's pointing out that the crown for America's most popular beer has passed on from to Modelo, which is a Mexican beer sold here by Constellation Brands. But the industry as a whole still has this problem where it has prices have had to go up for a variety of reasons, and consumption is going down. What you have a couple of suggestions in your column, Andrea, about what Bud can or Anheuser-Busch can and should do. What?
Yes, notwithstanding my comments earlier that brands really do need to stand for something, and they need to be authentic, and they also sort of need to make the world sell things but don't do harm and make the world a better place, and all those comments. I think Bud is in such a position now that it has little choice but to try and reconnect with its core customers in some way, whether that is different marketing. I mean, it's done marketing around various events, which obviously hasn't had much impact yet, but it needs to find a way to really reconnect with these customers that it has lost. And I mean, I'm not a beer drinker. I have to say I've had like one beer in about the last 30 years, but I'm told that Bud, the consensus is Bud should be improved as a beer. This isn't coming from me. This is what I'm told. So, perhaps that's another way to start. Perhaps, improve the product, relaunch the product, try and relaunch it in some way with a different marketing campaign that helps it to connect with these customers it lost, because these are really big increases. I mean, we'll have to see what's happening now. We've now moved into the third quarter, the peak summer months. We will have to see whether this is abating, whether we get the third quarter results. But from the market share data, it looks like, yes, it might have eased a bit, but it's not eased that much. I mean, the other thing is, it's been, although parts of Europe have had very hot weather, parts of Europe, such as the UK, have had dreadful weather, lots of rain and storms, and probably neither of those are really good for beer drinking, because if it's very hot, you perhaps don't go out as much as you would normally. It's absolutely pouring outside. You're not going to go and sit in a beer garden in the UK at the moment. You've also got the issue with inflation. Yes, that is easing. Part of the thing that really drove inflation for the brewers was packaging, products, cans and bottles. That as well as the ingredients, that does seem to be easing. So they, perhaps will get a bit of help with inflation, but it's a pretty, challenging outlook out there, and Bud really needs to find a way to arrest this sales decline.
Yeah, I suppose the conundrum is that set the brand, as well as to try and sort of improve the quality of that. You're talking about money that requires enormous capital expenditure, budget, and so on. And the question is for the executives at Anheuser-Busch is whether good money, if the overall pattern of consumption is heading downwards, should you really spend that kind of money on a product that, even if it wasn't for this controversy, is on its way down?
Exactly. That is indeed the conundrum. And the other thing is, it's quite interesting because AB InBev is a particular type of company. You know, it's really grown through acquisition. It bought SABMiller in 2016. That was its last big deal to become Mega Brew. It's very good at making these big acquisitions and really squeezing cost out. And where it invests, it tends to invest to premiumize its brands so that it can charge more and get better margins. So a sort of a brand reset. I mean, obviously, there are obviously lots of, you know, capable people in these big companies, but it's not really its core it hasn't been its core competency for, you know, throughout its ages as it's grown. So that will indeed be a big reset. The other thing is, it's still quite indebted from all its deals. I mean, net debt has come down a lot. It was over $100 billion after the SABMiller deal. It has come down a lot since then. It was 73.8 billion at the end of June, but that's still 3.7 times EBITDA. It's got a goal to come down to 2 times. So if it wants to get its debt down, and the other thing about AB InBev, it likes to make these acquisitions. So, you know, it's been, you know, 8 years, getting on for a decade since its last big deal. It need, you know, if it wants to have its usual playbook, it needs to get debt down and make another big acquisition. And this controversy sort of really throws a spanner in the works of, you know, throwing off EBITDA and cash, paying down debt, and making a big deal again. So there's all these other things about the company to consider.
Yeah, and as you point to your point that there are competent people in the company. One sign of that is, of course, that it is well run at some level. Its margins compared to European margins are very, very high.
Indeed, that's been, you know, but a lot of that has been through this premiumization, through cost cutting. You know, there is a question: should it invest more? You know, I think it's talked about 4.5 billion to 5 billion of capex this year, which is sort of pretty much in line. Should it you know, spend more to really try and get this going in the right direction? But it, you know, even with the reset, I feel that, you know, we will all still be thinking about what's caused the reset. You know, every time anybody writes about the reset, we're going to have to say, you know, it'll be in the wake of, you know, the Dylan Mulvaney, you know, debacle. It's not going to go away even if it resets it. So it's definitely really big decisions to make.
Right. The glass, no pun intended, is that sales outside the US have been better than expected. I think you point out that although the share sort of initially fell on its sort of overall the shares have fallen, but they have gone up a little bit recently because of the performance outside of the US.
That's right. Yes, the glass half full view is that even with all this going up, you know, EBITDA I think rose about 5% in the second quarter, and that was about twice the level that analysts were expecting. So, you know, it benefited in its other markets. You've got Asia reopening, which should help. You've got inflation potentially coming down in Europe and Asia, in Europe and the US. You know, potentially consumers not being quite as squeezed. They might open up their wallets a little bit more. It's bound to have to promote to get Bud drunk again, but it can promote, and perhaps that will encourage people to buy. So yes, that's the glass half full view.
And of course, you will be trying as it goes in the months ahead. Andrea, thank you very much for joining me this morning. And thank you to all our listeners and viewers for joining us as well. We do these live streams every day. Or at Opinion is our handle to find out more about streams. And then please go to bloomberg.com/opinion to read a terrific piece on this particular issue, but more generally, her great columns on a wide range of topics. And join me next week for another edition of On Topic. Thank you very much, and goodbye.